Rather regrettably, I think this is going to be an end of a line video for this 1970s Pioneer stereo receiver. This is model SX-434. It was in production from 1973 until 1974 and was their low-end model of the time, the lowest end model of the time, and was known as the blackout display receiver. Some people refer to it as that, at least, because you can see that without any lighting behind it, you can't see the dial at all. This is actually a 30-watt receiver, 15 watts per channel, left and right, RMS. And it's not a very powerful receiver, but it does have a nice rich sound to it, akin to higher-end Pioneer receivers. But there are quite a few glaring problems with this unit that are going to preclude me from using it on a daily basis, and in fact it's probably going to be the reason why it's going to have to head to the recyclers. This does have A and B configuration for speakers. You can hook up 4 speakers, 2 pairs of speakers total, and you can run them either individually or all at once in A and B configuration. Knob is missing for here. It's got a 1/4-inch phones jack, a bass and treble knob, which do work, do control the bass and treble. Balance, that's missing the knob. And then we have the volume knob, which seems to be cooperating now. Most of the time it just spins and doesn't actually do anything. And then we've got controls here for loudness, tape monitor, mono, and FM muting. This does have FM muting, so when you go in between frequencies and there's just static, you'll just hear silence. And if you want to disengage FM stereo to get rid of that hiss, you can engage mono operation. And it does have a line level input, which is labeled as tape monitor. And the loudness switch, if you're listening at lower volumes, will increase the treble and the bass, make it sound a bit better. And over here is the function control for AM, FM, phono, and aux. It's also missing the knob. It is actually seized in place. There's no way to turn this at all. It's completely frozen. And what it appears to, at least to me, is that the previous owner, these knobs actually, if I pull this off, have an internal plastic piece which slides over this metal piece here. And what I'm pretty sure happened is that this plastic piece became separated from the metal outer housing of the knob, and the previous owner probably attempted to glue it. That's why there's all this yellow discoloration. Looks like glue dried all over it, and I guarantee he got glue inside the actual pot itself, which has now led to this thing being completely seized. Doesn't even turn at all, which is unfortunate. So it's locked into, I think, FM mode. Probably that's probably the last position it was at before the guy glued it. And this does have a 1/4-inch microphone jack, a tuning dial which is also bent and out of alignment, so when you're tuning here it doesn't actually show you the correct station. I think it's a few stations slow, so when you're tuned, let's say, to 100 megahertz, it's actually you're actually listening to something close to 102 megahertz. So another unfortunate occurrence. And this is a blackout dial, so you can't see anything without the lights being on in this unit. And this has some electrical gremlins. The previous owner, this was definitely ridden hard and put away wet. It has a blown left channel. The right channel is scratchy and very quiet. And in fact, the speaker outputs don't even work on this unit. The only way to even hear audio is to hook up headphones to the phone's jack. All of the dial lights are completely burned out. Originally they would have been just a plain blue, like a baby blue color. There's a stereo light up here, which I think works, I'm not sure. And then over here is your tuning indicator. That does work, surprisingly. I would have thought for sure that would have been seized, but it's not. So it tells you when you're dead center of the FM or AM channel, the FM frequency, so you can tune in properly. And there also used to be a light on this dial pointer, and that's completely burned out. There's no light on there. The screw up here, I never knew that. It looks like this may have even sustained a fall sometime in its previous life, which could have contributed to a lot of the problems that are plaguing it now. Yeah, it's all broken. And it looks like somebody was meddling around in here. It's missing a screw on this side and on the other side. It should have one, but it is missing. Here's the back. You have your regular 75 ohm unbalanced connector. It's the old style. It doesn't use an F-type coaxial connector like you have for cable TV. So you have to stick your cable up into here and then wrap the copper strand around this screw and tighten it over it. It's a bit strange how that works. I like the F-type connector, but this precedes them actually including that on one of these receivers. And we have two 300 ohm balance connectors, a ground and an AM antenna. And this does have a ground connection for the phono input. It has an aux input as well, and record and playback modes, separate jacks for record and playback for the tape deck. And behind there is a separate DIN jack for record and playback. I guess if you have one of those cassette decks that use DIN jacks, but that's really a relic of the 70s and not even from the United States. It was somewhat popular in the United Kingdom, but not so much in the United States. I've never really even run into any tape decks that use DIN jacks aside from reel-to-reels. And this does have your basic AM antenna, which I don't know if it's supposed to swivel like that. It probably is, but it looks to be like one of the wires is actually, looks like the wire was torn out in one of these. That's strange. And then it has a separate FM de-emphasis switch up here for 75 and 25 microvolts. And the left and right fuses for the speakers are located behind here, and I did attempt to change the fuses just to see if that would fix anything, and the audio is still blown on the left channel, and then the right channel is very distorted and works intermittently. And if you move a switch and if you just give this thing a tap every now and again, it will work for a few moments and then it'll go right back to being distorted. So maybe something is loose in here, although I'm not too sure. And we could hook up, you could see 4 ohm or more speakers to the A and B, 8 ohm or more. And this does have 2 AC outlets, a switched and unswitched. The switched one is 200 watts and the unswitched is 300. And I've actually seen one of these SX-434 receivers with those weird, it looks like AC outlet connectors for the speakers, but this one doesn't use those, thankfully. Looks like this thing took a pretty hard fall. This whole thing is all smashed and it's all falling apart. Alright, I just got the front cover off for the first time. Looks like we've got a date here, a date code here of 1974. I could be off though. And we've got the tuning capacitor here and the tuning wheel, the flywheel, which also appears to be bent somehow. I don't know how that could have happened. Up here, right here, is the dial assembly of the dial pointer, as well as the light that should be on it. That should work. It's probably burned out. And then up this way is what should be the FM stereo light. I have no clue why it's loose like this, and the housing it used to reside in is cracked, so that doesn't make sense. And what's really odd about this whole thing is that this whole assembly for the dial and the fuse bulbs is completely loose. Somebody was definitely messing around in here. I don't know if it was somebody who didn't know what they were doing, or maybe they were attempting to repair this and then got themselves in a bit too deep and didn't really know it. I'm not quite sure. But the fuse bulbs are here, and then there's a separate one for the tuning assembly. It's completely loose. There should be 2 screws here that go onto these 2 little metal pieces that stick out. They're missing. They aren't in here. And this whole thing is just completely loose. And furthermore, what makes this even stranger is that I tested these bulbs externally outside of this unit. They all work fine, but they won't light up when they're put in this actual assembly, so that leads me to believe that there are yet more electrical gremlins in this unit that are precluding these bulbs from working as well. We've got a transformer here that they've put in some sort of a metal casing, I guess, to prevent interference. We've got 2 ELNA filter capacitors. I don't know if the camera will be able to pick that up. I'm not too sure if these filter capacitors are to blame for the distorted audio on the right channel and no audio on the left channel, although something tells me I'm going to have to dig a little deeper to figure out what actually is causing that issue. And again, for some reason that capacitor looks to have a hole in it. I have no clue why. That could be causing the problems as well. And here is the rear of that tuning assembly, the dial assembly. You can see it is blue. And there's the red coating for the FM stereo light. And if you look, you can see that this capacitor looks to have been pushed. It's coming off of the circuit board and it's soldered connections. So again, that could be the cause of the problem as well. And the plastic on the rear of this tuning indicator is highly yellowed, most likely from the light being emitted from these fuse bulbs. Looks like somebody almost attempted to repair this. I don't know if this was original or not, but I don't think so. Looks like somebody soldered it and then put heat shrink tubing over it, which is interesting. This looks to be the only bulb that actually works in the unit, so maybe this was the only thing that was replaced, and then the owner just gave up and decided to throw it out instead. And they don't make it easy to get into here. You have to remove this all these screws all over the place, and you have to remove this whole front panel assembly and bezel just to be able to access the screws to take off this whole cover here, because many of the components are hidden underneath this whole chassis right here. This is not all of it. It's all located underneath here. You can see all the cables and wires that run under there as well. This is what it would have looked like had it been working. This is supposed to be red, and this all here is it's a lighter blue when it's all lit up, but because it's getting indirect light, it's a darker blue. And I've actually heard of people who've had luck converting these over to use LED bulbs, but because this is an AC circuit that powers these bulbs, as it stands, I think this thing is pretty much as good as gone. Okay, a few moments later I actually tried hooking up my headphones to it, and there's absolutely no output whatsoever. There's no even indication of this thing even working prior to my recording of this video and trying to test it right now. I was able to get some audio out of the one channel, and I was able to see some activity on this tuning indicator, but as it stands right now, it's completely dead. So unfortunately, come a few days from now, I'll go ahead and drop this off at the recyclers to take care of, because this unit unfortunately is EOL.